I never thought I'd be sitting here at 90 years old, telling this story. Most people knew me as Arthur's wife, the quiet woman who stood by his side at galas, always smiling, always agreeable. They saw me as the homemaker, the one who raised our children while he built his empire. But today, I'm going to tell you the real story. The story of how I, Elizabeth, the silent partner, saved everything he built from the very people who were supposed to cherish it most. Our story began like a fairy tale. I met Arthur when we were just kids with big dreams. He had the vision, the charisma. He wanted to build a company that would change the world. And I had a knack for numbers and a quiet determination that matched his fire. While he was the face of the company, I was the engine humming silently in the background. We were a team. He'd come home, exhausted but exhilarated, and we'd spend hours poring over plans and spreadsheets at our small kitchen table. Those were the best years. He always called me his secret weapon. I was the one who saw the patterns no one else did, who could spot a bad deal from a mile away. We incorporated the company together. His name was on the door, but my signature was on the founding documents right next to his, a 50-50 partnership. It was our secret, our special bond. He wanted the world to see him as the self-made man, and I was happy to let him have the spotlight. My joy came from seeing our shared dream flourish. As the company grew, so did our family. We had 3 children, Robert, Catherine, and David. I poured my heart into raising them, teaching them the values of hard work and humility we held so dear. But money changes people. As they grew up surrounded by wealth, a sense of entitlement began to creep in. They saw the company not as a legacy to be nurtured, but as a treasure chest to be plundered. Their visits became less about seeing us and more about asking for money. A new car, a lavish vacation, a business venture that always seemed to fail. Arthur, with his generous heart, could never say no to his children. He'd sigh and write the check, hoping this time would be different. I saw the disappointment in his eyes, but his love for them was unconditional. In his later years, Arthur's health began to fail. As his memory faded, our children's greed sharpened. They started circling like vultures. I'd overhear them talking about selling off parts of the company, about their inheritance. They saw their father not as a man to be cared for, but as a gatekeeper to their fortune. They started coming around with documents for him to sign, trying to take advantage of his confusion. That's when I knew I had to step in. I became his shield. I managed his schedule, screened his calls, and sat in on every meeting. Our children were furious. They accused me of isolating him, of trying to control the money. They called me a gold digger, forgetting I'd been there long before there was any gold to dig. The irony was painful. They didn't know I was protecting their father's life's work from their own reckless hands. The company was also in trouble. A series of bad investments, pushed by a new board member our son Robert had recommended, had put us on the brink of collapse. Arthur was too frail to see the danger. The board was in a panic, and our children were oblivious, still planning how to spend the money they thought they had. One night, I couldn't sleep. I walked into Arthur's old office, the room where we'd built our dream. I ran my hand over the worn leather of his chair. I couldn't let it all crumble. I still had my 50% stake. For years, I had been a silent partner, but the time for silence was over. The next morning, I called an emergency board meeting. When I walked in, you could have heard a pin drop. They saw me as just the old wife. I let them talk. I listened to their panic, their plans to sell for pennies on the dollar. Then I stood up. I introduced myself not as Mrs. Elizabeth Sterling, but as Elizabeth Sterling co-founder and 50% owner of Sterling Industries. I presented the original incorporation documents that our lawyer had kept safe for decades. The shock on their faces was something I'll never forget. I laid out my plan, a plan I had stayed up all night perfecting. It was aggressive, it was risky, but it was sound. I pointed out the flaws in the investments Robot's friend had pushed. I showed them a path back to profitability, using strategies Arthur and I had developed years ago. The old guard, the ones who remembered the early days, they looked at me with a newfound respect. They saw the same fire in my eyes that they had once seen in Arthur's. The board voted. My plan was approved unanimously. For the next 2 years, I worked tirelessly. I became the CEO in all but name. I restructured, I negotiated, I cut the dead weights, and I steered our ship out of the storm. The company not only survived, it thrived. It became stronger than ever. All this time, my children had no idea. They thought the company had miraculously saved itself. They were too busy waiting for their father to pass. When Arthur finally left us peacefully in his sleep, the children were quick to call the lawyer. They gathered in the grand boardroom, dressed in black, but their eyes were bright with anticipation. They couldn't hide their excitement. I sat at the head of the table, in Arthur's chair, and said nothing. The lawyer began to read the will. Arthur's personal effects, his watch, his books, were divided among them. They nodded impatiently. Then came the part about the company. The lawyer cleared his throat. To my beloved children, Robert, Catherine, and David, he read, I leave you the greatest gift I can offer. The knowledge that you have to make your own way in this world. I have given you enough over the years. The company you expected is not yours to inherit. The room erupted. They shouted. They accused me of manipulating their father, of changing the will. That's when the lawyer held up a hand and read the final addendum written in Arthur's own hand years ago, when his mind was still sharp. It said, my entire 50% share of Sterling Industries is to be transferred to the only person I have ever trusted to protect it, my partner, my secret weapon, my beloved wife, Elizabeth. She built this with me. It has always been half hers. Now it is all hers. The lawyer then presented the company's current valuation. It was double what it had been when Arthur fell ill. He also presented the documents from the board meeting 2 years prior, showing my intervention and the plan that had saved the company. Their faces went from rage to disbelief, and finally to a horrified understanding. They hadn't just been disinherited, they had been exposed. They realized I wasn't the feeble old woman they'd dismissed. I was the one who had outsmarted them all. They had tried to take everything, and in the end, their greed left them with nothing. They stormed out, of course, hurling insults and threats, but their words were hollow. They had no power anymore. Show, Ere, Yum, 90 years old, and the sole owner of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Some might call me ruthless, but I did what I had to do to protect our legacy. I protected it from the world, And in the end, I had to protect it from our own family. It wasn't about the money. It was about the promise Arthur and I made to each other at a kitchen table all those years ago. A promise I will continue to honor for as long as I'm here. Thank you for listening to my story. It just goes to show you should never, ever underestimate the quiet ones. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe for more stories you won't hear anywhere else.